Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Serpent Temple. This is going to be a weekly review. We're going to be looking at 3 albums. One is an old album by the band Coven called Witchcraft Destroys Minds and Reaps Souls, released in 1969. The second album is a more recent release by the band Afterbirth. It is called 4-Dimensional Flesh, released in 2020. And the most recent release is by the lovely band Turnstile called Glow On, released in 2021. So Floyd, Coven is definitely different to the other releases we're reviewing today. What did you think of Witchcraft Destroys Minds and Reaps Souls?
Well, firstly, lol, 69.
Okay.
That's the maturity of my humour.
That's the sex number.
Yeah. It's this was different. Because there's a couple facts about this album I thought was really interesting. Like, not so much facts, more coincidences.
Yeah, I know what you're going to talk about.
Such as, it's the fact that the bass player, who was credited as Osborne, I can barely say the name. That's how excited I am.
You mean?
That's how excited I am about the fact. Osborne.
The famous
Osborne.
You've broken me. I'm just ugly laughing so hard right now. Oh my god.
Shit. Fucking hell.
Rock the Osbar. Wow, that's...
I'm really dehydrated. So fucking up words even more than usual. Okay.
Were you perhaps trying to say Osborne by any chance?
No, I was talking about the uncredited member, Osborne, who wasn't credited on the album. So it's even more of a coincidence. No, I was trying to say Osborne.
Yes.
And the first track on the album is Black Sabbath.
And this is exactly almost a year before Black Sabbath debut album, Black Sabbath. Yeah. So this is before Black Sabbath. This album was released before anyone knew of them, before they had officially released anything. So this is definitely a weird satanic coincidence.
Yeah, and I'm guessing, well, from what I've read anyway, that this is some of the first kind of recorded music to include such strong references to the occult, right?
It
and this
literally has a black mass in it.
Yeah, and it's the I read that it's also the first then to feature the devil horns.
Yeah. So I don't know how true that is, but I know the singer Jinx Dawson, she has said this. She was friends with Dio, because Dio also says that he was the first to introduce the devil horns.
The thing is, I also read with the thing about the thing with Dio is obviously he's got Italian heritage, right?
Yeah, Italy and
that's
Spain.
It's like a thing, right? It's to you say.
But they do it like this.
Okay.
So they have it point the head, so it looks like a devil head.
Yeah.
So you're making a little demon to be like, fuck off, demon.
Yeah.
Go away, devil eye. And that's what Jinx was saying. So I feel like her and Dio probably had family members who would do that.
Yeah. Cool.
But yeah, apparently she was in the Rainbow Bar and Grill talking to Dio. And Dio was like, I'm thinking of starting this band called Rainbow. And the singer of Coven was like, that's never going to take off with a name like that. Are you sure you want to call it Rainbow? Yeah.
Did it take off?
It did.
Okay, cool.
It did take off.
Double checking.
It did very well, yeah.
Now, I know Rainbow were a band, by the way, just for anyone who thinks I've never heard of fucking Rainbow before. Just want to clarify that.
Oh, bless. Well, I also read.
So the other day when I put that, this is not going to be relevant to anybody else apart from me and Nina. When I put in the chat about Aragorn breaking his, Viggo Mortensen breaking his toe,
That was so
I was thinking, I wonder if anyone's going to take this bait. But okay, so I'll do a full run through of the band members. You've got Jim Donlinger, who's guitar vocals. There's actually 3 people listed as playing or contributing towards all the keyed instruments. So I've got Jim Nyholt, John Hobbs, and Rick Jarrett, all listed as organ, piano, and keyboards. So I don't know if that's respectively or combined.
I wonder if it's all at once.
And then 2 people listed as for bass as well. So the Osborne and Alan Estes, and then Steve Ross, drums and percussion. So with this album, I think musically, obviously, it was something that was quite similar to a lot of music that was kicking about at the time. I think for me, one of the standout things on the album is the vocals by Jinx Dawson. I think she has a tremendous voice, and I think there's some like vocal techniques and things going on, which I think, frankly, probably would have scared the ever-loving shit out of people back in 1969. Like there's some actual like proper screaming at the end of the title track, not title track, sorry, the opening track, Black Sabbath. And also like the last track where it's just fucking, it is literally just like a what do you call it?
Monologue? Or the Black Mass?
Yeah, Black Mass, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know which version you listen to, because there's the one with the Black Mass, and then the recent, I think they did like a 50th anniversary release or something. So they've been going for 50 years. They still play shows now.
Yeah.
Jinx is still active, and she still has she's 70, and she does not look 70.
Well, I watched a bit of their live footage from the set they done at Roadburn, and like one, she looked absolutely amazing, and it sounded really fucking heavy, because like this album, I think musically isn't too heavy, but from a lyrical and a contextual perspective, there's obviously elements that I could see as being really influential to a lot of like kind of burgeoning metal bands and stuff. But like, you know, like it's like when you listen to, if you kind of like grew up listening to death metal and you listen to Black Sabbath, you'd be like, oh well, that's not that heavy. But I think sometimes you've got to take yourself out of your own perspective and your own experience and put yourself in the eyes and mind of someone that would have been experiencing this back in that time. And yeah, I think it was like super fucking like influential and kind of pioneering. But yeah, the live set looked fucking amazing, actually. I mean that's just a testament to Roadburn as well, because I feel like this their stage and the production that they give the artists the freedom to pursue just allow for such amazing sets to be performed at that festival.
I absolutely love that about Roadburn, and they're also really careful about like what artists they invite. Like if they don't want to, I've heard that Walter will go to great lengths to make sure that bands don't have dodgy members and things like that politically or with their views and things. So I really respect that. So the thing with this, the last track on the album is officially the Black Mass, which is like a legit recording of a Black Mass. Then in the edition release that I listened to for this, Jinx has like a monologue at the end where she's like talking about how the album was written and recorded.
Yeah, that was the one. I listened to the Spotify version, and that was at the end.
Yeah, it's so cool because she's talking about how like they all signed, like they've all made a pact that they would like never betray certain things, and she was like, 2 people have betrayed the band. And they talk about how like when they went to sign their label contracts, they all had like red Sharpies on the table waiting for them, and they were like, this is stupid, no. And they got out their knives, their ritual knives, and cut their wrists and then signed in their own blood, and all the label execs were like, what the fuck? And then like when they did the album, I think like 2 people from the label, they cut out bits of the Black Mass, and they're like, you know, they shouldn't have done that. They you know, we're naming and shaming them now. They're like, this is your comeuppance and stuff. And then they're talking about how like they didn't do everything properly for the ritual, and that like they didn't sign off the ritual properly at the end, and it like ended up with her cat getting killed. And they like left, and her cat had been like smashed against a wall or something.
Oh shit.
Yeah. And it's like really creepy. It's like genuinely super creepy. And she's like incanting, I guess.
She's
I don't know.
blood incanting.
Hey! Yeah, it's like, it's really like, she's really good at storytelling. Like she uses her voice really well when it comes to like, she can just tell you something in this kind of almost frantic but powerful way. It's like really commanding, her voice.
Yeah, I've noticed that on a lot of the tracks, she likes to kind of like emphatically sing the title track at the beginning.
Yeah. Or
at least during the chorus of every track. Like, what was the Coven in Charing Cross?
Oh, it's so catchy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really, like, every time I listen, now you've just said the title, I can't get it out my head. It's really catchy. And she does some really cool stuff with harmonies, and, like, she'll sing something low and then sing it high, and then the harmony will be high on the low part and then low on the high part. It doesn't sound very good when I say it like that, but hopefully you get what I mean. So there's, like, lots of crossover with the harmonies. And yeah, she's just fucking terrifying.
It reminds me of, the voice reminds me a bit of, do you ever listen to Melanie Safka?
No.
Like an old Canadian kind of folk singer. My mum's obsessed with her, but it's like super, super like powerful voice and like a really good range as well. It's definitely, it'd be interesting to know if Melanie was an influence. I think Melanie was around in the early 60s.
Cool.
So it would have been potentially an influence.
Yeah, there's sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I just think it's really cool that something that is so kind of like seminal and kind of important to the progression of the sort of heavy metal genre was kind of started by a kind of like a badass fucking...
A woman.
Yeah.
Yeah, and not many people... So I think what happened was, I think their stuff got pulled by the label when they saw how like satanic it was. So a lot of people didn't actually realize that they were straight up Satanists. And then in 1971, one of their tracks, One Tin Man, got really famous, and it charted because it was in the soundtrack of a Western film. I think it was called...
Billy Jack?
Billy Jack, that's correct. But everyone was like obsessed with the song, but no one knew that they had this album Witchcraft with like satanic shit in it. So they just thought they were like a band who did just this like normal-ish song. And like, yeah, because like you couldn't find it. And it wasn't until later on that like you could find their stuff more readily and that people like kind of worked out who they were. So they had like several resurgences, and their most recent one was in like the last 5-10 years.
Yeah, I've actually meaning to listen to that track to see if I recognised it, but I didn't get around to it. But no, there's some. It's a really like interesting. So I knew none of this prior to like reviewing it, none of these facts and stuff, and just kind of crazy that I've never been made aware of this prior to this point. It's
really funny because they were like, so I don't know, you know that like famous journalist Lester Bangs? He was like the almost famous guy.
Yeah.
He described Black Sabbath as the British answer to Coven.
Yeah. And
like now we just don't know who Coven are. It's so weird how music can do that. Like the narrative of metal is Black Sabbath and not Coven. Which is, it kind of must be bitter. I don't know. If I like invented, if I was like kind of one of those, because when you hear about proto-metal, you don't hear about Coven so much. You hear more about like, so Lord Baltimore, like the other proto-metal stuff I've kind of like tried to shoehorn into the podcast to be like, hey, how about this, huh? But yeah, I feel like it's funny because a band like Electric Wizard, straight up, 100%, hugely influenced by Coven. Like the presentation, this like the way they sing about satanic stuff, like even the narrative way they sing, like all the songs in this album are sung like a story, like an Iron Maiden style story, where it's like this is there was like a coven and they did some sacrifices, they killed a baby. Then I'm obviously not doing it the same way she does it, but like there's that element of like basic storytelling, which is really effective, and Wizard do that, Maiden do that, loads of bands do that, and these guys are doing it in this satanic context, and it's like really fucking heavy, and the singing has loads of vocal distortion and screaming, and like she's doing weird stuff with her voice as well. Like Wicked Woman is probably one of my most iconic Coven tracks for me, where she just does this like weird like spitting, whispering kind of sounds so lame when I do it like that, but she does that. She does that like in the chorus, and you're like, damn, that sounds so good. It's like she's cracking a whip, or I don't know. There's some like definitely some like BDSM shit in there for sure.
Yeah, no, it's so when did you kind of like first you personally discover the band and kind of?
I heard Wicked Woman. I don't know where, but it was a long time ago. I think I probably discovered them on YouTube. Honestly, I think I just saw Wicked Woman and I was like, that looks cool. Yeah. It's a wicked woman, she's empowered, and I just like clicked on it. I saw the album cover and it's got this like blonde woman flanked by like upside down crosses and shit. So yeah, I just thought it was sick and I really liked it. It's probably when I was listening to Electric Wizard. I think or maybe it was a Velvet Underground thing, because I really liked Venus and Furs, and I think Wicked Woman was probably like a suggested video or something. Yeah, no,
it's always interesting for me being introduced to something kind of so seminal at such a late stage in my... Well, I'm not dying or anything, but such a
Jesus Christ,
an advanced stage of my musical life.
God damn, advanced stage. That's terrifying.
No, but it's musically it was quite good. I think there was some. I do really like. I always love organs, and that being implemented as that trad rock kind of sound, and some great bass work, drum work. Like you can tell, like the musicianship is pretty damn good as well. Like my favorite track probably is like Coven.
In Charing Cross. Yeah, it's a real good one. I really like it. Her lyrics are just so. They're really simple, but she's really good at putting them together. Like it's really rare that I'll listen to something like this and actually like pay really close attention to what she's saying, because it's so like old school storytelling, musical storytelling by a fire. Yeah, no, and it's so they must still be touring now then, right? Yeah, they still play shows. They actually played London a while back, but it was like £40 for a ticket, and I couldn't afford it.
Yeah.
But they were really famous for their stage show. I don't know if they still do it, but Jinx would come out of an actual coffin on stage. And at the time, it was like really like a huge deal, because this was like around the time of Alice Cooper and stuff like that. I think it was before even. And they'd literally have like a real coffin. They'd wheel it on stage, and she'd just come out and start singing.
See, do you know what? I think it's so cool because, like, there's such a sense of, like, legitimacy to this band compared to, say, like, I was literally just going to say, like, an Alice Cooper, where it was very much more like shock rock and kind of just done from a almost kind of theatrical perspective and kind of corny and goofy. And I actually used to think the same. I'm not going to say much else about them, but I actually used to think exactly the same about Marilyn Manson as well. Like, I didn't think there was ever really any substance to anything he ever really did.
This is like as Dax Riggs was to Marilyn Manson with Acid Bath. This is like that to Alice Cooper. Although I do rate Alice Cooper more than Manson, I'd say, because I liked his political aspects of what he would do. He was actually saying something.
Yeah, I feel like Cooper, yeah, exactly. Like he's not as one-dimensional as I think I've just made him out to be. But
but I can see why you'd think that based on a stage show.
Yeah.
She's just in a really good motion.
Not like I think Alice is going to be tuning in, or he's going to turn up at my door dressed in a golf gear with a golf club and want to fucking.
I don't listen to Alice Cooper or anything like that, but I do like him. I don't think there's anything wrong if you think it's goofy. I can totally see it is goofy. I agree on that level. But yeah, this is legit because they're actually fucking doing rituals and shit.
Yeah,
and,
especially the fact about the contract side. And I didn't know about that. That's pretty fucking legit.
Yeah, it's really cool.
I mean, I'd faint because I don't like blood. So I'd be like, yeah, I'll fucking sign this. But another quick fun fact before I forget. But I think Shem will maybe appreciate this. Alice Cooper used to play golf with Bill Goldberg, the WCW wrestler. Pretty random. Just the image of Bill Goldberg, this giant man playing golf with Cooper. Just pretty weird.
It's weird thinking of them playing golf. That's. I wonder
obsessed.
if he dresses up.
He's like almost professional.
Wow.
Well, he is professional. I think like he's at like a pretty elite level.
Damn, Alice Cooper, elite golfer. He should do a game, elite golfing on the N64. That would be interesting. Yeah. So one of the Coven posters back in the day actually had a nude Dawson lying on an altar as the rest of the band displayed the devil horns around her.
Yeah.
So this is like one of the... It was obviously very controversial because back then, Naked Lady... And this was, I think, before the Satanic Panic, because that was, in the 80s? The Satanic Panic?
Oh, God.
Because that was like a Manson thing, wasn't it? So that would have been 80s, Judas Priest.
Yeah, because that was when he went to court for the backwards lyrics, right?
Oh yeah. Well, there you go. So yeah, I think this band are like so before their time. I think if they released this in the 80s, I wonder how differently it would have played out for them. They probably would have been like properly tied into the Satanic Panic stuff, and ironically could have catapulted them into like bigger fame.
But the crazy thing is, if they released it in the 80s and not when they actually released it, would we even have half of the shit we have now?
Exactly.
So
exactly, it's true. I wonder if like Ozzy saw this and was like, Oz Osbourne, maybe I can. Yeah. If I just change one of the syllables there.
yeah. Just say
Osbo Osborne. But yeah, I mean, this is hands down an iconic album that I think again should be up there, and I think it should get more credit for sure for influencing not only a shit ton of bands but also just like just organizing this shit, being so... I mean, Dawson described it as a scholarly work. Like, one of the members came to our house with like a box full of books, like satanic books and stuff, and was like, here, like, base your lyrics on these. And she like wrote the whole album in one night.
Yeah.
All the lyrics for the album.
Damn.
And I think like she said that there was like 4 more songs contributed by the rest of the band members, because there's 10 songs on the album. So yeah, obviously she's put a shit ton of effort into like cultivating these lyrics and researching Satanism. And it sounds like she does Satanism too, or did, by the sounds of it. And she's fucking young looking, so I wouldn't be surprised if she's like doing some like virgin blood shit or something.
That's literally what all the comments were saying on the Roundup video, which is like, she's definitely signed a pact with the devil. But yeah, it's it's funny because I've always found the whole Satanism thing quite hokey. But I'm talking mainly in the context of like death and black metal here.
It's so hokey and black metal. Yeah, it's like not in any way. Well, that's the thing, is like the context of black metal is anti-Christian, whereas Satanism is the most Christian It's like the most Christian way of rebelling against Christianity, because it's based on opposing God.
Yeah.
So it's like...
So you've got to believe in that concept initially,
right? To
have an antithesis to it.
It's like trying to rebel against your parents by being like your parents. It's really... I know there's different kinds of Satanism. LaVeyan Satanism, I don't want to... I mean, we're literally reviewing a satanic band, and I think Coven are legit, and what they're doing is really good. But my personal opinions on Satanism, I don't rate it very highly, and I don't like the Satanic Church in America very much, because they have some like real dodgy shit going on behind them. But at the moment, they're trying to like shoehorn themselves into Texas with this abortion stuff, which is good, but also people should do a bit of research into... I don't think there's anything wrong with like choosing what you want to believe in, but do your research on your institutions for sure.
Well, there's some people that are absolutely convinced that Satanism plays a big part in the New World Order as well. And that it's legit Satanists helping harvest this thing called the adrenochrome.
Oh, the adrenochrome thing. Oh,
which is like the fear gland or something.
Oh, there was like a comment on YouTube where someone was like, "Oh yeah, I wonder how she looks so young," and someone's just replied with a single word: adrenochrome. It's like Hunter S. Thompson just made that shit up. He just made it up, and people just believe in it now. It's so fucking stupid. Yeah. It was like supposed to be a joke about how that shit is like not a thing. But yeah, I mean, ironically, if you inject a young person's blood into an old person's veins, it does reverse the signs of aging. And that's like a thing people in Hollywood are doing now. And that's not a conspiracy theory, it's like actual thing.
That was always what they said about the royal family, was that they would get regular blood transfusions, which is why a lot of them lived to such a sort of ripe old age. I mean, like not like Prince Philip looked healthy. I mean, he looked like he died 30 years ago.
He was a vampire.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's going to be very long until Amazon are like drone dropping bags of blood into our houses as part of our monthly subscription to look like, you know, we're 3-year-old children, because that's what's hot apparently.
According to Dagon from Inquisition. No, probably cut that
bit. Shit! Holy fuck. Well, Steelfest will like that comment. Love Heart reacted by Steelfest. And Steelfest fans. Anyway, speaking of blood, shall we move on to the band Afterbirth, who released 4-Dimensional Flesh in 2020. Not to be confused with the thrash speed metal band from Massachusetts Afterbirth, or the death metal band from Pennsylvania Afterbirth, or the thrash metal crossover from Alabama Afterbirth, or the heavy metal crossover from Michigan called Afterbirth. This is the Long Island, New York Afterbirth.
There's also a death grind band called Screamin' Afterbirth.
Ooh, a placenta that can scream?
Yeah.
Wow.
The album cover was a bathtub with like Bub Buff in it and just a solitary shit in the middle. I'll show it to you afterwards.
Solitary
that's how I remember it anyway. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that was the album cover.
I prefer the memory to the reality either way. The album cover of this band is like an astronaut in an Escher painting, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, so the artwork was actually done by, I mean, he's got like I suppose an artist's name of Keyshaw. And he's from a band called Black Harvest, who are kind of like a black and sort of death band from, I can't remember if they were from the States as well, potentially.
I would expect possibly. So what did you... I know this is like a Floyd suggestion. Afterbirth.
Well, it's like a combined suggestion from me and Shem, I think.
You guys are big fans of the Heavy Hole podcast.
We've been
Shout out.
Ingesting a fair amount of content from that particular podcast. And yeah, I mean, like the whole New York, Long Island death metal scene is a revered, like, facet of the death metal scene for a reason. The interesting thing about this band is they released one demo which gained, like, kind of cult status called a Psychopathic Embryotomy back in 1993, and it was one of the earlier kind of releases that really encapsulated that kind of slam style. Like Suffocation were also one of the earlier ones with their 91 release, Effigy of the Forgotten. That's a real seminal kind of New York death metal release. And then that was the only recording this band did for years.
Wow. For
years and years and years. And then basically this is their second full-length album. The first one, Time Traveler's Dilemma, was released in 2017. And unfortunately, tragically, the original lead singer died. And Will Smith, one of the guys from the Heavy Hole podcast and a member of bands such as... why can I never remember any bands?
I think I can help you here.
Artificial Brain, of course, the main one. I know.
It's like one of your favourite bands.
Buckshot Facelift.
Reeking Aura and the ex-Demolic tribute band, Biolic.
Yeah.
Which sounds like a Pokemon move, I must
but
say.
Artificial Brain. Do you know, as Artificial Brain was the one I was thinking of, but in my head I just had the word Afterbirth and I just couldn't formulate the words. But and that's another great band as well. They do some really cool kind of like dissonant, kind of like techie death metal.
We'll probably have some on here soon at some point. Yeah.
But he does a good job of kind of emulating that really kind of toilet bowl vocal style, like popularized by like Ruben Rosas, the Devoutment vocalist, and Matty Way from Disgorge, and and Antti Bowman from Demolic as well. Like he's the first one to really popularize that kind of really weird croaking, kind of like frog-like vocal style. But this album I personally prefer this newer one to their first album, Time Traveler's Dilemma. I feel like they really kind of found their feet with this release, whereas Time Traveler's Dilemma was a bit more of kind of like a standard-ish sort of tech death album. It still has a lot of the experimental elements that are prevalent on this album, but I think that it's always cool to hear bands that have elements of slam. I wouldn't even call this a slam release, but it's got a lot of elements of it, but intermingled with some pretty interesting shit, which I'll go into detail a bit later, because I'm quite eager to hear what you thought of this album.
Yeah, I mean, I knew it was going to be good because you guys suggested it, so it was good. That much is certain. I thought it was a really interesting album. I looked into more of musically, I knew you were going to do a great job of like describing it. It's like pretty interesting. There's some interesting drums. The vocals are definitely sounds like a toilet mid-flush, which is a good thing. I was kind of surprised because I thought it was going to be more death metal-y, but there are bits in it that actually remind me of the next album we're reviewing, that's Turnstile. There's bits of it that are kind of like uplifting guitar. Almost reminds me of like Don't Hate Me Here, of some emo music. Because like,
can I hear that?
There's definitely like a really introspective sound to the album, like especially with the instrumentals. There's like 3 instrumentals if I remember correctly, and you've got Girl in Landscape, which is like really dreamy and neurosy at times, and you've got these like kind of like big soundscapes happening amidst these like toilet vocals. And then I was like, oh, I wonder what the lyrics are going to be like. There's going to be some like really like relationship, introspection, like, you know, like neurosis style, like industrial lyrics. And I look and they were definitely not what I was expecting. There's definitely a lot of stuff about senses. There's like a sensory exploration in the album, I would say. I think that's where like the intersection between the music and the vocal and the lyrics like kind of kick in. But I'm very curious. I'd love to know if there was like more of a concept like overall, because I kind of skimmed the lyrics. I was kind of confused by beheading the Buddha and then spiritually transmitted disease, because I don't know if this was intentional, but it just made me think of like the Taliban blowing up the Buddhas of Bamiyan in Afghanistan a few years back, and that was like kind of weird. And then following that with spiritually transmitted disease, I was like, what is the intention here? I would love to know the intention behind that curation with the lyrics. But then the actual lyrics after that, like, kind of seem to be, it reminds me of like a space movie where everyone's dying, which is cool. I really liked the lyrics to Rooms to Nowhere, because I thought they were kind of simple in like a really endearing way. So I'm gonna read them. Let me see, where have I put them? So here's an excerpt of Rooms to Nowhere. It goes like this. Am I dreaming? Is this hell? The air in these rooms has a smell. Now I'm crawling on the floor and I can feel grease and dirt on my paws. Not paws like a dog, paws like in your skin. My screams, they echo and then come back to me. The walls get narrow. It reaches out for me. How do they follow through the rooms to nowhere? As it gets darker, these halls lose all gravity. I float, drifting here, vertigo. And then in parenthesis it says, excrement starts to flow in the air.
Yeah, there's definitely like a kind of like a sci-fi space exploration sort of thing, and I think this is following on from the previous album, Time Traveler's Dilemma. So I think it's loosely following the horrific exploration of time travel and certain sort of cosmic horrors.
Is that the fourth dimension then? It's time.
I'm guessing so. Yeah, that's what I would have thought. Yeah,
that's cool.
But no, like for me, the thing is, and like I was saying this a little bit off air as well, when it comes to things like death metal, like I rarely delve into the lyrical subject matter because I'm just like, half the time the vocals are completely indecipherable anyway, especially with this kind of brutal death metal style. But it's but for me it's just how well it all meshes together, and like I think this is one of the very few albums for me that straddles that fine line between having elements of extreme brutality and really kind of like poignant melody.
Yeah.
Similar to what Lycathia of Flame do.
Yeah.
Because like there's times this album was just like, holy shit, this sounds like a Lycathia of Flame song. And then like, and there is very few bands to the point where I can't actually even think of another band that even comes close to not necessarily emulating that style, but creating something that has that same impact with me from that musical perspective.
That's really cool.
So, and there's just some really cool, and they're big fans of the pinch harmonics as well, which is like a big thing in the death metal, especially the New York death metal scene as well. Bands like Immolation, who are big on like sort of like harmonics and stuff, and Malignancy as well, who are they had an album called Intrauterine Cannibalism, which is...
What is it with the womb and these bags?
How do you pronounce it?
Intrauterine.
Intrauterine. Losing the plot today, aren't I?
God forbid that you become a gynecologist.
Not for lack of trying.
So funny. Yeah. Someone should just send a bunch of death metal lyricists into like a medical school and just watch them faint when like a pregnant woman walks in. Like, good Lord, a baby in the uterus. I don't know.
Thank God we're not reviewing a Carcass album, especially some of the earlier ones.
It's so funny. I love this like death metal obsession with vaginas. It's like the most terrifying thing a man can think of. I love that. I love that I'm walking around with the most feared object in this entire genre. It's like in Dune, the place no man can go. I love that. It's so great.
It is crazy because you look at a band like Cannibal Corpse, like what they've got a track called "Addicted to Vaginal Skin."
Is it spelled like? Is addicted spelled with like dick? Is it ADDICK?
It's spelled correctly.
Oh, that's such a shame. They really missed that one.
But then, like, you know, it's if you ever go to a death metal show at times, and there is a good portion of the crowd, and you could tell a lot of guys there have never had any form of
vaginal touch.
Yes, to put it diplomatically.
Oh, bless them.
But no, so it's and there's you were touching on the instrumental tracks and how they have some quite varied instrumentation, and one of the tracks actually really reminds me of Enslaved, funnily enough, an In Times Era Enslaved track.
Yeah.
It was the which track was it? It was Minimum Safe Distance. So the instrumental tracks are only about 1.5 to 2 minutes long, but I think they provide some good kind of brevity and relief from some of the other tracks, which were a bit more of a full-on kind of like onslaught. But even in the more fully fledged tracks, I reckon there's a lot of melody and kind of interesting things going on. There's some great cool effects going on with some of the some synth work going on in the background that's just really quite definitely adds to the lyrical subject matter of it being set in kind of like a sci-fi kind of setting.
Yeah, I really like that. I really, really liked two songs in particular. One was Swallowing Spiders. And the lyrics for this kind of conjured this nightmarish scene of women standing in the sea, swallowing, shoving spiders into their mouth, if I remember correctly. It's great.
Yeah.
And then I love Black Hole Kaleidoscope. It's chaotic, and it reminded me a bit of Cryptic Shift at times, so I really liked that.
Well, the funny thing about Swallowing Spiders is there's a part of the track that really reminds me of Akakoc.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, so it's interesting that was your favourite track.
There you go.
There's parts of it that have that kind of same. You know how Akakoc kind of do those they do a good job of doing those dizzying riffs, but they're still super catchy.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Because I think that's the problem. I've said this on here before with Tech Death. A lot of it is just way too flashy and not enough actual feeling and thought goes into the actual creation of the music. But I would say this album is techie, but in a way that it's completely human still.
There's storytelling in here. They've actively tried to craft the album in such a manner where there's a beginning, middle, and end, which I think some bands are we'll put this here, we'll put that there, and we'll just stick this one in there. So I really like that. I think that's what music originally was. That's why lyric means poetry and also music, because music was originally how we told each other stories. So there you go. That's me being a bit of a wanker. But yeah, I really love this album. I think it's great. These guys seem fun and they like time travel. I'd like the kind of almost, what's the word? Almost vulnerable exploration of the senses here. There's a lot of I wonder how much of it is analogous to the New York landscape, because I felt like there was, the rooms, the endless rooms to nowhere. Is that a New York skyscraper? There's a mention, I think, in Spiritually Transmitted Disease, or everything in its path of this beast with sizzling sewage dripping out of its mouth. Yeah. So I was is that a New York? Is that a road? Because I went to New York once and there's a lot of sewagey. It's nice. I'm not calling New York a sewage place, but it's got the, in the films where there's New York in a film and there's the steam coming up from the grills in the road, from the sewers, and then you've got the big skyscrapers. I hope I'm not being racist to New York, because I liked New York, but there you go.
That reminds me of Hey Arnold when you were describing the thing coming out of the series. Yeah, because I'm pretty sure that used to happen, and that's a cool cartoon.
I loved Hey Arnold.
Yeah.
Yeah, his head was such a weird shape.
Yeah, move it, football head. Yeah. Yeah, no, that was a good cartoon.
Imagine being a kid and your hair grows like that. That must be so stressful.
Yeah, it's basically similar hairstyle to mine. If I grow my hair, it kind of just grows there. Yeah.
When I was a kid, my hair was mini Marge Simpson.
Oh, no way.
I had cartoon. It was this big hillock of curls, weird kind of. Yeah, it was solid. Anyway.
But I think this is what's so interesting about this. Like I was mentioning before, was that here is a band that had nothing but a cult demo that gained a bit of traction back in the days, particularly only really among the death metal enthusiasts. And typically it's quite a common thing where a band would have a series of demos and then fucking years, decades later come back with something and it's shit. They've totally lost touch with whatever it was that they captured back then. It's just they've tried and it's just fucking failed. But that's not what's happened here. They've come back and exceeded, I think, everyone's expectations about what a band that have had trying to do basic maths in my head now, over 20-year hiatus, have come back and produced something that's actually relevant to the scene now. And I think, it's the original members, more or less, apart from the vocalist. Yeah. So it's testament to, that Shem was telling me, which I actually didn't know because I've not seen the episode yet, that the guitarist was quite into yoga now and spent a bit of time just away from music and kind of, so it's just real testament to them as musicians. I think that they could come back with something that's so vibrant, this dropped in 2020 during the pandemic, and it blew my fucking mind when I first heard it, because I was just holy shit. I was expecting just an album full of a devoutment worship or something like cephalotripsy or just some form of, derivative of slam. But no, this was actually new, and it's an evolution of what they were doing before, which I think, it's not something you really see too often in death metal bands that have been, around the block a few times.
Yeah, for sure. I gotta say as well, I can really hear the Demolic influence as well in the vocals.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not mixed in the same way, but I can hear the influence for sure.
it's a big night. It was a big 90s thing where I think, and Joe from Broken Hope as well was another one that really was the first to employ a super, super deep kind of subhuman guttural style of vocals. And for a good few years in the 90s, and I think stretched to the early 2000s as well, it was just all about who could do just the sickest, like most ridiculous sounding vocals. You know, you had bands like Guttural Secrete, sort of Internal Suffering, a great Colombian band who I think ended up relocating to New York. Just used to, you know, it was just, and it was quite an exciting time because it was just like, it was always pushing the envelope. It's like, it sounded ridiculous from someone not part of the scene, but to people that were into death metal at the time, there was something just so interesting about hearing vocals just sounding more and more kind of sewage-like.
Yeah.
Like, it was just super cool, and that's the thing, you know. I think that's always been the thing in death metal as well with the vocals. It's always been an accompaniment to the music. Like, it's always served like a percussive element as opposed to like an actual, you know,
like lead guitar melodic.
Yeah,
kind of thing, yeah.
And you're like, it's not catchy. There's no real death. There's no vocal
hook with
hooks.
a vocal. Yeah.
I mean, it can actually be quite catchy because you find that a lot of bands, especially in the New York scene, are heavily influenced by hip hop as well. So there's often a flow to like the grunting. It actually is similar to like a hip hop style beat, and especially with things like slams and breakdowns, they're heavily influenced by like, you know, kind of like big bass drops and like fat sort of like hip hop beats.
That's so cool.
Stuff as well. So it's like it's a merging of two sort of styles that wouldn't be immediately apparent to anyone listening to it for the first time.
Yeah, definitely. I wouldn't have been aware of that. I know so very little about hip hop.
Yeah, same. Yeah,
As I demonstrated earlier. Yeah. Well, I mean, we can move on to the next one unless you have any final remarks.
But no, just yeah, that was my final.
Simply
so
to
that was my that was me trying to do death metal vocals there. No, just look forward to what they do next, and it will be cool to the main thing I'm looking forward to with everything that's happening in the pandemic is hopefully things become safe again, and I would just love to see some more US bands again, because I think we've all kind of realized during doing this podcast is that we're quite into a lot of music from the States.
Yeah,
and like it, and I think there's a lot of bands that I kind of really am itching to see live now that have made some like big waves in the scene the last sort of few years. And hopefully Hellfest will be a good opportunity for that because they've got a good varied lineup. So fingers crossed.
Ooh.
But we'll just have to wait and see, of course.
God.
But yeah, no, and just once again, just like fucking shout out to the New York death metal scene for just fucking always being true and repping it so hard in death metal for so many years. Like they've never fucking compromised, and like you got bands like Internal Bleeding as well who are just so seminal to the scene. And I felt like, you know, you got a band like Dying Fetus, for example, who have had pretty, I'd say, a lot of success. I mean, they've been booked on Download and stuff, and you know, but there's other bands who've done a similar style of death metal who've just kind of faded into obscurity a little bit from the mainstream perspective anyway. Like in the underground scene, they've always been seen as important bands, which is good. But yeah, so yeah, it's just always good to listen to some fucking good old fucking US death metal.
Hell yeah. Hello, New York death metal scene. We send our greetings. So let's look at Turnstile, the new album Glow On. To my understanding, this is a shift in their sound. It's the first time I've listened to Turnstile. Not a genre that I normally dip my toe into, but I'm happy to because it's great and wonderful. So you should probably introduce it because you know more about the band than me.
Yeah, so my friend Jack actually introduced them to me at some point during the pandemic, actually, to their second album, Time and Space, which was more kind of rooted in the punky hardcore, but it still had elements of kind of like slight forays into contemporary sort of pop leanings. But it just really kind of caught me off guard because, you know, like, and I think we've said this before, if I had never listened to pop punk before, I've never been a big pop punk fan.
Yeah, me neither.
But like, if I had never heard pop punk before and you had to tell me or ask me what I think pop punk sounds like, I would point to a band like Turnstile. I would be like, this in my eyes is what pop punk is, because it hasn't strayed too far from the hardcore punk leanings of like, you know, your Ramones and your Misfits and stuff, but it still has just a bit more of an edge to it, and not that really fucking annoying vocal style. Like,
whiny,
just not a fan of it.
Fucking, I hate my parents, but I'm 40 years old. Vocal style.
Yeah, and you know, at the end of the day, there's enough fucking fans of it. It doesn't matter what I say, because there's enough fans of that shit for it to be popular forever. So, you know, it doesn't matter. But I think it's shit.
It's just weird when adults make music marketed at 12-year-olds. It just creeps me out.
Yeah.
I don't get that.
It is a bit odd. But anyway, so like this album is, I feel like this is a very, once again, it caught me off guard because there's elements of this album that I feel really heavily lean into kind of like contemporary pop stylings, whether it be the track Underwater Boy, spelled B-O-I.
Boy.
And it's just really cool to hear them kind of diversify their sound while still kind of retaining their core kind of values and integrity as musicians. Like the second track, Blackout. Wow. Let me just double check this shit.
That's so funny.
Oh, trust. Now my internet doesn't want to work.
Oh, no.
You don't have the track list and listed, do you?
They're the only band I didn't do a track listing for, because I was like, Floyd will do that bit.
Pretty sure it's Blackout.
I think so.
That's got a breakdown in it, which is, I think that's where I got the word break from there. That's what confused me. But it's got like a pretty sick breakdown towards the end. And it's, and like this is interspersed with like some almost Latin percussion.
So much Latin stuff on this. It's awesome. It's so groovy. And it's just really, really nice to see like a non-typical Western musical style introduced into this kind of, obviously I'd say that, but into this kind of like cool, more like, I wouldn't say mainstream, because it's not like some like foul, tasteless bong water that's being marketed at like people who don't like music. It's actually legit really good. And they've like marketed themselves to a broader audience, and they've done it really fucking well. Like there's bits of this album, like the beginning sounds like Mort Garson with a Moog synth right at the beginning of the album. Do you know the bit I mean?
100%, because I said the same. I've written down the same thing I said when we were reviewing the Mort Garson album, which was that this reminds me of Steve Miller, Fly Like an Eagle.
No way.
Like the cascading kind of synths. It's that same kind of fucking sound.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's something cool where they had that, and then it just instantly fucking transitions into the really kind of like anthemic.
I love that.
Sort of riff, and there's a lot of like very anthemic music on here, and I think that is the word that kept kind of coming back to.
Same.
Like anthemic and groove, because there was just a hell of a lot of groove as well. And I think the vocal work on this album is much better on this album than it was on the previous album. It's not quite, because when I listened to Time and Space, the second release, I've still not listened to the first release just because I'm lazy. I found it quite jarring, but kind of in an endearing way. I was thinking, I wouldn't expect this music to have vocals like this that are quite accessible. But I feel like on this album, he's kind of nailed the right moments to employ different vocal techniques.
Definitely,
like the kind of like half yell shout for like the big anthemic. There it is again, choruses, and then slightly more restrained during a more kind of melodic or melancholic section. So it's just really well done and well crafted.
That's reflected in the production as well, because every single song, the vocals are produced differently, which I think is quite unusual for a lot of bands. Usually they'll just do, okay, this is the vocal, we'll just do it like this, it'll be panned like left, right, blah, 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 and they'll just stick that, and then occasionally put some extra reverb or like a bit of delay at the end of a verse or something. Whereas this, like, some of the songs have like a 3-part harmony, which is like where it sounds super anthemic, which I really love, and they have like this choral style where there's like backing on the vocal as well, so it's like a super layered vocal. Other times the vocal will be like completely isolated, so it sounds like really intimate, and the way he's also using the vocal in each song is slightly different too. So I really love that. I think that's really clever, and they've put so much like detail into the album by doing that, because there's so much detail in the production. It's beautifully produced.
And I think, that's a very, very good point, because I think when you look at the core of the music, from a musical perspective, it's quite simple music. But they've taken that and they've used all these little production tricks and little flourishes and features. It features a guy from Ilford in London called, let me figure out what his name was again. God damn. Oh shit, checking facts.
It's coming, and here it is, the fact that you've been waiting for. It's the fact of the day. produced by Floyd Elphinstone on the Serpent Temple podcast. We have the fact coming up. He's scrolling on his phone. Will he find it?
I'm getting there.
Oh!
Do you know, it's listed on the Spotify. Nothing seems to work for me today. I couldn't find it on my notes.
And he does not get the fact title of the day.
I've got it in my head, but I'm doubting myself now after the breakout blackout thing.
No.
So I'm thinking, like, if it's what I think it is, and it's not, it's going to sound really fucking stupid.
Ah! Sorry.
It was, do you know, I was fucking right. Blood Orange.
Oh, yeah, that guy. He was in Alien Love Call.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that weird song. It's so weird.
Yeah, and it was cool because it threw me for six, because all of a sudden I'm hearing, like this spoken word, like, London accent. I was like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
And I think that track in particular, that was I think that's a good example of them, you know, kind of foraying into something a bit more contemporary that would have a broader appeal.
Definitely.
Kind of similar to the way Bring Me the Horizon have kind of transitioned into that poppier sort of style. I think they've done a good job of doing it. Well, I mean, some Bring Me the Horizon fans will disagree. Some that I know as well, because they absolutely fucking hate that album. But like, there's a lot of people that says, you know, it's kind of pretty punk rock of them to decide, you know, fuck it, we're just going to do a pop album.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like, and now they're doing, I think any things they've been doing recently have been a bit more similar to their kind of metalcore leanings. But but no, I think, and this is the same, you know, like it's dipping in and out of different genres while still retaining its core sense of like groove and there's definitely like still a strong element of hardcore here. Like I will like readily admit that I kind of fell out of love with the hardcore scene a few years back and just am nowhere near as well versed as I was back in the days. But like there's been a lot of things that really make me want to kind of immerse myself in the scene again. From a musical perspective, I've never been big into being part of a scene from a cultural perspective, but like I really want to explore some hardcore a bit more and kind of delve into some stuff. And I think Turnstile have done a great job of just really kind of branching out and like even the track Humanoid Shake It Up, which is like a two-part kind of track. It starts off like a classic, almost like Ramones-esque, like really like old school, like punky track, and then transitions into something that sounds like one of the beatdown sections of a Power Trip song, which is just really cool. So there's elements of thrash in there as well. One of the tracks, Fly Again, actually is, I think, a loose tribute to Riley Gale from Power Trip, who unfortunately passed away as well. And that was a tremendous loss to the scene, in my opinion, because I'm a big Power Trip fan. And I think he was, thankfully, I've seen them live, and I have to say, I think they would have been fucking a huge band if things panned out differently.
That's so sad. It's funny because Fly Again, I wrote that down because it reminded me of Myrath with the vocal delivery and like the way the guitar was played at times. Yeah, it's like really similar in my opinion.
Oh, it's cool. I have to listen to it again, see if I can catch that.
Yeah, there's a lot of like Hijaz, but in the Spanish kind of way, which I love. It's so like danceable. I'm gonna listen to this album like after the podcast for sure. I really like it. And I noticed that they use like lo-fi as well. I don't know if you've like ever listened to those like wonderful lo-fi playlists on YouTube when you're like there's like elements where they're doing that and they change the fidelity of the music at times. Like there's bits usually in like the last third of the song or like halfway through they'll just like suddenly change how the guitar sounds in the mix and they'll kind of like muzzle the guitar. I don't know if that's, you know what I mean, it just sounds like fuzzy and quiet and then like something else happens or something like drops in at that moment. You're like, oh, that's unexpected. I really like that.
Because it kind of done that in the last track. It kind of fades out and then it starts with that kind of Mott Garson-esque, then the riff comes back in just for a few like a good 10 seconds.
I really love that. There's something really happy about this album. It's so like upbeat and positive, and I was looking at like an interview of the guys and they're all just lovely looking human beings, like vegan. I think they're vegan, some of them might be. They're all straight edge, that much I know. And there's just like they're on this rooftop in America and they're like looking at a sunset and two of them have like their arms around each other's shoulders and they're just like, oh, you know, look at this over there, isn't this cool? And they're just like so friendly with each other. They're all like really old friends and they just do everything with each other, and it's really like, that's so wholesome.
I think that's always, it kind of reminds me of the kind of hilarious at times duality of the hardcore scene in the sense that there's a lot of people. There's the real thing about brotherhood, but then you go to the show and it's the most violent fucking show you've ever been to. Like even a Turnstile show. Like there was a footage of them playing in Baltimore, because they're from Baltimore, Maryland, home of The Wire, the greatest TV show of all time.
Indeed.
I may have mentioned that before. And funny enough, they've filmed it, or they've edited it in a way where it looks like footage from something like Woodstock or something, or like Lollapalooza, where it's just, I can say Lollapalooza for some reason, but not simple words. But yeah, and it just looks really like retro and kind of cool. But yeah, but like it's fucking like wild. Like there's people somersaulting off stages and people running off the stage, like doing the Greg Puciato thing from Dillinger Escape Plan where he runs along their heads. And you know, like it's wild. Like it's fucking mental.
If someone ran along my head, I'd literally die. No doubt I'd burst like a melon.
But it's, yeah, so, and I think they're booked for Hellfest anyway.
Oh, we'll go see them. Yeah, I remember
so,
we chatted.
I just won't go near the front because I think it's probably going to be pretty rowdy.
Not I think they're playing in the punk area as well, which is where the most violent pits are. So, cool. Yeah, definitely back of the arena for that one. This is definitely written for the arena. I can hear that this is going to sound incredible in a big venue. Yeah,
I think the track that's got the most hits on Spotify currently anyway is Holiday, and that doesn't fucking surprise me because that song is an absolute banger. Like, I've actually been listening to this album a lot in the gym because I like to listen to a lot of like mid-pace and music that isn't too challenging to get me through a workout typically. And it's just been perfect for that because it's just got the right pace and the right sense. And like you said, it's upbeat and it's easy to listen to and accessible, but also still, you know, not accessible to the point where I think it's derivative or you know, overly commercial.
I was listening to the Anthony Fantano review. I didn't listen to the whole thing. I just don't have the attention span, but he called it dream punk. And I think that's quite a good description of it.
Yeah, I could kind of see that. Yeah, it's just had that kind of ethereal kind of like quality to it at times.
It's like pink and fluffy, but with an edge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that mean like Death Heaven is like dream black metal?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Dream black metal. That just sounds like there's some horrible joke you could make there about, I don't know.
DBM.
DBM. You a DBM fan?
That's a pretty good description, I think, because it's, yeah, like as you were saying as well, there's just the amount of shit going on with the production is just pretty wild and cool, and I think that all lends to that quality where it does sound like just pretty euphoric at times as well. So it's, yeah, great album. Ever since I heard it, I was just like, shit, yeah, this is something I could so easily listen to at most points. Probably not at a funeral. I wouldn't listen to it during a funeral, but like at the gym, on the bus, walking down the road. It's not many. Yeah.
His funeral, not his barbecue, where we dismember him and serve him with meat patties and burger buns. Not that I've thought about this. Anyway, so Turnstile, fantastic album. I can't wait to see this live. It's going to be really cool.
Yeah, I think it's going to be. I'm looking forward to seeing them at Hellfest. I think it's. God, that lineup is just ridiculous. But you're absolutely right. I feel like a lot of this music was kind of designed to be its most impactful when played live.
Yeah.
And you could see it in the show that was uploaded on YouTube in Baltimore, where it was just like it sounded so good, and it was like a proper like hot day, and there was just people just fucking having a good time, somersaulting and flailing their arms,
turnstiling it out.
Nice.
That was awful. I think on that note, I think it's probably time to end. Or do you have any more comments on your...
I think I've said all I want to say in regards to this album.
Awesome. Thank you so much for listening and bearing with us. Feel free to suggest anything else you want us to review. Feel free to like and subscribe. We have YouTube, Spotify, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We have the whole shebang. So yeah, feel free to catch up with us whenever you want. Thank you for listening and goodbye.
Till next time.